Commander Veltar floated in his observation chair, 6 eyes fixed on the blue planet below. For 300 years, the Valthek Empire had watched this small world. They called it Earth. The creatures living there called themselves humans. Commander's ship hung invisible in space, hidden by technology the humans could never dream of. His claws tapped against the metal armrest as he studied the latest reports. These humans were still primitive, still bound to their single world. They fought among themselves with crude weapons. They burned fossil fuels and polluted their air. They were exactly like every other species the Empire had found. Another war has started on the northern continent, reported Sub-Commander Krill, his voice echoing in the vast bridge. The humans continue their typical aggressive behavior. Veltar nodded. It was always the same story. Every species went through this phase. They would fight and kill each other until they either destroyed themselves or grew tired of war. Then the Empire would arrive, offering peace and protection. Most species accepted gratefully. "Sir," called Communications Officer Thek from across the bridge, "the humans have launched another space vehicle." Veltar's eyes shifted to the main screen. A small metal craft climbed slowly through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of fire behind it. The humans had been doing this for decades now. They sent these tiny ships to their moon, to the red planet they called Mars, and sometimes beyond. "Pathetic," muttered Krill. "Look how slowly it moves. Our smallest scout ship could cross their entire solar system in the time it takes that thing to reach orbit." But Veltar felt something strange as he watched the human craft. There was something different about this one. It was bigger than their usual ships, and it seemed to be heading toward the edge of their solar system. "Track that vessel," he ordered. "I want to know where it goes." Days passed. The human ship continued its journey, moving far beyond anything they had attempted before. Veltar found himself checking its progress constantly. Why would they send a ship so far from home? What were they hoping to find? The answer came 3 weeks later. The human ship crossed into Valthek space. "Sir," Thek called out, his voice high with excitement. "The human vessel just passed the boundary marker at Kepler 442. It's officially in Imperial territory." Veltar straightened in his chair. This had never happened before. In 3 centuries of watching, no human ship had ever left their solar system. The automatic defense systems should have destroyed it the moment it crossed the border. "Why didn't the defense grid activate?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The systems are functioning normally, but they seem to be ignoring the human ship." Veltar stared at the screen. The small human craft continued its journey, moving deeper into Imperial space. Then something impossible happened. The ship began broadcasting. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it through." The bridge filled with a strange new sound. It was a human voice speaking in their primitive language. But as the translation systems worked, Veltar's blood began to freeze. "Greetings to whoever is listening," the voice said. "My name is Captain Dongwu of the Earth Defense Corps. We know you have been watching our world. We have seen your ships in our skies. We have detected your signals. We come not as enemies but as neighbors who would like to meet." The bridge fell silent. Veltar's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. The humans knew they were being watched? How was that possible? "Sir," Thek whispered. "The message continues. It's repeating in multiple languages." Veltar listened as the human began, speaking again. This time the words made his heart stop beating. The human was speaking in perfect mathematical language, using number systems and equations that only the Empire used. Then he switched to Corvan, an ancient language that only scholars remembered. Then Vethian. Then Thekmor Crystal speak. "This is impossible," Krill breathed. "How do they know our languages?" But the human wasn't finished. Captain Dongwu continued his message, speaking directly to them as if he could see through space and time to their hidden ship. "We know you have the power to destroy us," Dongwu said. "Your technology is far beyond ours. Your empire spans the galaxy. But we ask you to consider this. We are not your enemies. We do not want to fight. We want to learn. We want to understand. We want to join the community of worlds that fills the stars." Veltar's claws gripped his armrest so tightly that the metal began to bend. Everything about this was wrong. Primitive species didn't speak multiple galactic languages. They didn't detect Imperial surveillance ships. They didn't broadcast messages that showed they understood Imperial power structures. "Sir," Thek called again. "There's more. The human is transmitting technical data, engineering specifications, mathematical proofs, star charts. Sir, some of these calculations are more advanced than our own. Veltar rose from his chair and moved to the communications station. On the screen, streams of data flowed past. Complex equations that solved problems Imperial scientists had worked on for decades, designed blueprints for engines that could theoretically travel faster than anything in the Imperial fleet, biological studies that showed understanding of hundreds of alien species. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Captain Dongwu's voice continued from the speakers. We have been preparing for this moment for a long time. We have studied your empire, your history, your people. We know about the Corvan Commonwealth. We know about the Vethian integration. We know about the Thekmor compliance. We know how first contact usually goes. Veltar felt his world tilting. The humans knew about the Empire's history. Those were classified files, sealed in the deepest archives. How could a primitive species from an uncontacted world know about events that happened before their civilization even existed? We do not want to follow the same path as those who came before us, Dongwu continued. We do not want to be subjects or slaves. We want to be partners. We want to be equals. We believe the galaxy is big enough for all of us to live in peace. Krill moved closer to Veltar. Sir, this changes everything. If the humans have this level of knowledge, if they've been studying us, then they're not primitive, Veltar finished. They never were. The captain's message was ending. We will wait at the edge of your space for your response. We hope you will choose to meet us as friends. We hope you will give us the chance to prove that humanity can be a valuable addition to your empire. But understand this. We will not beg, and we will not kneel. We come to you as equals, and we expect to be treated as such. The transmission ended. The bridge of Veltar's ship fell silent. Sir, Tech said quietly. Orders. Veltar stared at the screen where the small human ship continued its journey. Everything he had believed about these creatures was wrong. They weren't primitive. They weren't helpless. They had been watching the Watchers, learning while they were being studied. Send a message to High Command, he said finally. Tell them we have a problem. Tell them the humans are not what we thought they were. As his ship turned to leave, Veltar took one last look at the blue world below. 300 years of watching, and they had learned nothing. The humans had been preparing, planning, studying. While the Empire saw primitives, humanity had been becoming something else entirely. The thought that chilled him most was simple. If they had been wrong about the humans being primitive, what else had they been wrong about? In the cold depths of space, Captain Dongwu's small ship continued its journey, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species. Behind it, Earth turned slowly in its orbit, no longer the primitive world the Empire had catalogued centuries ago. The galaxy was about to change, and nobody was ready for what came next. 3 months had passed since Captain Dongwu's ship crossed into Imperial space. The High Council of the Valthek Empire spent those months in heated debates, arguing about what to do with these strange humans. Some wanted to destroy them immediately. Others thought they should be studied. In the end, they chose the standard approach that had worked for 2,000 years. They would send an envoy. Envoy Prime Kethvar stood on the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching the small yellow star grow larger ahead of them. This was Sul, the star that gave light to the human homeworld. Around it spun 9 planets, with the third one being Earth. A primitive system, observed his aide, a young officer named Telk. 1 star, a few rocky worlds, some gas giants. Nothing special. Kethvar nodded, but something bothered him. The reports from Commander Veltar had been disturbing. These humans were not behaving like other primitive species. They knew too much, understood too much. But the High Council believed this was just unusual intelligence. Every species had surprises. The Empire always adapted. Sir, called the navigation officer. We're approaching the outer edge of their system. Should I begin the standard first contact approach? Proceed, Kethvar replied. Decloak the ship when we reach the 4th planet. Let them see our power. Fear will make them more reasonable. The Eternal Dominion was a massive ship, 3 kilometers, long and armed with weapons that could crack planets. When it decloaked near the red planet called Mars, every sensor in the human solar system should have screamed warnings. The primitive humans should have panicked at the sight of such overwhelming force. Instead, something else happened. Sir! The communications officer's voice was sharp with surprise. We're receiving a transmission. Already? Kethvar frowned. We only decloaked 30 seconds ago. Yes, sir. It's coming from near the third planet. They're using our own communication frequency. Put it through. A calm human voice filled the bridge. The translator worked quickly, but even before the words came through, the tone was clear. This was not the voice of someone who was afraid. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Hyun Soo, of the Earth Defense Corps. Welcome to Sol System. Please maintain your current position and await escort. Any aggressive actions will be met with appropriate force. The bridge fell silent. Kethvar blinked his 4 eyes rapidly. Escort? Appropriate force? These humans were talking to an Imperial dreadnought as if they were equals, sir, whispered Telk. They're threatening us. No, Kethvar said slowly. They're warning us. There's a difference. Before he could respond to the transmission, his sensors began reporting something impossible. Ships were moving toward them. Human ships. Not the crude chemical rockets they had been expecting, but sleek vessels that moved with purpose and speed. Analysis, Kethvar ordered. The tactical officer worked quickly. 12 ships approaching, sir. They're using some kind of fusion drive system. Primitive by our standards, but far more advanced than anything in our files about this species. Sir, they're moving in perfect formation. Kethvar watched the screen as the human fleet approached. The ships were smaller than his dreadnought, but they moved like hunters, like wolves surrounding their prey. But which of them was the prey? They knew we were coming, he realized. They were waiting for us. Admiral Hyun-Soo's voice came through. The speakers again. Imperial vessel, you will follow our escort ships to Station Alpha for diplomatic meetings. Any deviation from the prescribed course will be considered a hostile act. Station Alpha? Telk looked confused. Sir, our intelligence. Reports show no space stations in this system. Kethvar was beginning to understand. Their intelligence was wrong. It had been wrong for 300 years. Show me long-range sensors. Scan the entire system. The results made his blood freeze. There were installations everywhere. Space. Stations orbiting every major planet. Mining operations in the asteroid belt. Massive shipyards hidden behind the moons of the gas giants. This wasn't a primitive system with one inhabited world. This was a fortress. How? He whispered. How did we miss all of this? The answer came from his own science officer. Sir, they're using stealth technology, not like ours but effective. They've been hiding their true capabilities for decades. The human escort ships had formed up around the Eternal Dominion. Kethvar could see weapon ports on their hulls, missile tubes, energy projectors. The humans had been preparing for this meeting for a long time. Take us to their station, he ordered. There was no point in fighting now. He needed to understand what they were dealing with. Station Alpha was a massive structure, spinning slowly, to create artificial gravity. As they approached, Kethvar could see docking bays big enough to handle Imperial ships. When had they built this? How had they kept it secret? The docking process was smooth and professional. Human technicians guided the Imperial ship into position with practiced skill. Everything about their operation spoke of experience and planning. Sir, Telk said quietly, they're requesting permission to come aboard. Granted. Kethvar straightened his uniform. Let's meet these humans. The first human to board his ship was a female named Dr. Ji-Won. She was small by Imperial standards, barely reaching Kethvar's chest, but she moved with confidence. Behind her came a team of scientists and diplomats. Welcome to Sol System, Dr. Ji-Won said in perfect Imperial standard. We hope your journey was comfortable. Kethvar studied her carefully. She showed no fear, no awe at being aboard an Imperial dreadnought. She looked around his bridge with the calm interest of a scientist studying a new specimen. Dr. Ji-Won, he said. I am Envoy Prime Kethvar of the Valthek Empire. I have come to open formal relations between our peoples. Of course, she replied. We've been expecting you. We have much to discuss. Over the next several hours, Dr. Ji-Won and her team toured the Imperial ship. They examined everything with careful attention, asking technical questions that showed deep understanding of advanced physics. They took measurements, recorded data, and discussed engineering principles with his own scientists. But it was during the formal dinner that Kethvar began to understand how much trouble the Empire was in. Tell me about your empire, Dr. Ji-Won said as they sat in his private dining chamber. How many species have joined you? 412 species across 847 star systems, HFY replied proudly. The Empire has brought peace and prosperity to the galaxy for 2 millennia. Interesting, Dr. Jiwan said. And how many of those species joined willingly? The question caught HFY off guard. All of them chose to join the Empire. After? You demonstrated your superior technology and military power? The Empire always offers protection and guidance to younger species. Dr. Jiwan nodded thoughtfully. We've studied similar patterns in our own history. We call it imperialism. It usually doesn't end well for the Empire. The casual way she said it made HFY's spine tingle. This small human female was talking about the collapse of the Valthek Empire, as if it were a simple historical fact. The Empire has stood for 2,000 years, he said stiffly. Yes, Dr. Jiwan agreed. That's quite impressive. But empires always think they will last forever. The Roman Empire thought that. The British Empire thought that. The Soviet Union thought that. They were all wrong. She leaned forward slightly. The question, Envoy Prime, is whether the Valthek Empire will learn from history or repeat it. HFY felt cold despite the warm air in his chamber. What are you saying? I'm saying that humanity is offering the Empire a choice. You can treat us as equals, as partners in exploring and developing the galaxy, or you can treat us as subjects to be conquered and controlled. She smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. Choose carefully, history is watching. That night, alone in his chambers, HFY composed his report to the High Council. His hands shook as he wrote. These humans were not like any species the Empire had encountered. They were not primitive. They were not afraid. Most terrifyingly, they seemed to understand the Empire better than the Empire understood itself. The next morning, Dr. Jiwan presented him with a gift before he departed. It was a small data crystal containing what she called human historical records. Study these, she said. Learn how empires fall. Learn how freedom spreads. Learn why people fight when they have something to believe in. As the Eternal Dominion left Sol System, HFY inserted the crystal into his personal reader. The files contained thousands of years of human history. Wars fought for independence. Revolutions that toppled kings. Empires that crumbled when their people stopped believing in them. But the file that scared him most was labeled the American Revolution. It told the story of a small group of colonies that fought the most powerful empire in their world and won. The parallels to humanity's situation were terrifying. At the end of the file, Dr. Jiwan had added a personal note. We don't want to destroy your empire, Envoy Prime. We want to transform it into something better, something worth believing in. The choice is yours. HFY stared out at the stars and wondered if the Empire was already doomed. The High Council chamber on Vorth Prime had never seen such chaos. 12 council members, representing the most powerful species in the Empire, shouted at each other across the massive circular table. At the center of their anger was Envoy Prime. HFY's report about his meeting with the humans. This is impossible, declared Councillor Mechthol, his scaled fists slamming against the table. No primitive species can develop this quickly. They must have had help. Help from whom? Asked Councillor Velthara, her tentacles writhing with agitation. We control this entire region of space. Who could have aided them without our knowledge? Supreme. Chancellor Darvok raised one clawed hand for silence. The ancient Valthek leader had ruled the Empire for 3 centuries, and his word was law. The question is not how this happened, but what we do about it. HFY stood at the center of the circle, feeling like prey surrounded by predators. With respect, Chancellor, I believe we are asking the wrong questions. The humans are not our enemy. They offer partnership, cooperation, shared knowledge. Partnership? Mechthol's laugh was harsh. With primitives, the Empire does not negotiate. With lesser species, we guide them, protect them, rule them. It has always been this way. But they are not primitive, HFY insisted. Their technology is advancing faster than our models predict. Their strategy is sophisticated. Their understanding of galactic politics is remarkable. Chancellor, they knew things about our history that are sealed in our deepest archives. This caused another wave of angry voices. Several councillors accused HFY of weakness, of being fooled by clever primitives. But Chancellor Darvok remained silent, his ancient eyes fixed on something only he could see. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, humanity was preparing for what they knew would come next. In a hidden facility beneath the surface of Mars, Taejin worked quietly at his computer terminal. He had been living on Vorth Prime for 2 years now, posing as a cultural exchange student. The Empire's security was impressive, but they had never encountered human determination before. Taejin had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. He had learned their languages, studied their customs, and somehow convinced Imperial immigration officials to let him live in their capital city. What they didn't know was that every day he had been downloading their secrets: military deployment, schedules, economic reports, political analysis, personnel files, scientific research. For 2 years, Taejin had been the perfect spy, hiding in plain sight. His final report was ready. With careful fingers, he activated the quantum transmitter hidden in his apartment wall. The device would send his data to Earth in a single burst transmission, too fast for Imperial sensors to detect. "Command, this is Agent Taejin," he spoke, quietly into his communicator. "Beginning final data transmission. Operation Silent Scholar is complete." 27 light-years away, his report arrived at Earth Defense Command in milliseconds. General Park Min-ho read it with growing amazement and horror. The Valthek Empire was exactly what they had feared. 847 star systems, held together by military force and political intimidation. But it was also weaker than they had expected. The member species were unhappy. Many had attempted rebellions that were crushed with overwhelming violence. The Imperial military was spread thin, trying to control too much territory. Most importantly, Taejin had discovered the Empire's greatest weakness. They had never faced organized resistance. Every species they had conquered had been either too primitive to fight effectively or too peaceful to try. The Corvins had surrendered after a single demonstration of Imperial power. The Vethians had joined willingly, hoping for protection. The Thekmor had been conquered while they were still focused on scientific research instead of military preparation. But buried deep in Taejin's report was something that made Min-ho's blood freeze. The true story of first contact with the Corvin Commonwealth. The official record spoke of peaceful integration, willing cooperation, gradual absorption into Imperial society. But Taejin had found the classified files. The real files. The Corvins had been a peaceful federation of 12 worlds. When the Empire arrived, they had welcomed them as equals. They had offered trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. They had asked to join the Empire as independent members, maintaining their own government while contributing to the greater galactic community. The Empire's response had been swift and merciless. 6 billion Corvins died in a single day as Imperial warships bombarded their worlds from orbit. The survivors were rounded up, their leaders executed, their children taken away for re-education. Within a generation, the Corvin Commonwealth had been erased from existence. The message was clear. The Empire did not negotiate with equals. They eliminated them. Min-ho immediately called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Within hours, representatives from every major nation on Earth had gathered in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. "Ladies and gentlemen," Min-ho began, "we now know what we're dealing with. The Valthek Empire is not interested in peaceful coexistence. They see any species that refuses to submit as a threat to be destroyed." President Kim So-young of the Asian Federation leaned forward. "What about Envoy Prime Kethvar?" He seemed reasonable during the negotiations. "Individual intentions don't matter," replied Dr. Jiwon, who had just returned from Sol Station. "I spent days studying their culture, their history, their psychology. The Empire has one response to resistance: total annihilation." The room fell, silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had hoped for peaceful integration into galactic society. Instead, they faced a choice between slavery and extinction. "What are our options?" asked President Martinez of the Americas Union. Min-ho activated the holographic display at the center of the table. Star maps filled the air, showing Imperial territory in red and human space in blue. The difference in scale was terrifying. "Militarily, we cannot match them," he admitted. "They have thousands of ships, we have dozens. They control nearly 1,000 star systems, we barely control one. In a straight fight, we would lose." "Then we don't fight straight," said Captain Dongwu, who had remained silent until now. "Every human military academy teaches the same lesson. When facing a superior enemy, change the rules of engagement." "What are you suggesting?" So-young asked. Dongwu stood and walked to the star map. "Agent Taejin's report shows us something the Empire doesn't realize about themselves. They're not fighting an empire. They're fighting a rebellion that hasn't started yet. He pointed to various imperial systems. 412 species. Most conquered against their will. Many attempted uprisings that were crushed. But what if the next uprising wasn't alone? What if it had support, coordination, shared technology? Dr. Jiwan understood immediately. You're talking about galactic revolution. I'm talking about giving the galaxy something it hasn't had in 2,000 years, Dongwu replied. Hope. Back. On Vorth Prime, Taijin was packing his belongings. His mission was complete, and it was time to leave before Imperial security discovered what he had been doing. But as he prepared to depart, he received one final transmission from Earth. It was a message from Admiral Hyun Soo, encoded in a frequency that Imperial sensors couldn't detect. The message was simple but chilling. Agent Taijin, abort extraction immediately. Imperial fleet movements suggest imminent attack on Sol system. Take shelter and prepare for emergency protocols. Operation Prometheus is now active. Taijin looked out his apartment window at the sprawling city of Vorth Prime. Millions of beings lived here, most of them believing that the Empire was eternal, unchangeable, invincible. They had no idea that change was coming, but first the Empire would try to destroy humanity. And if Operation Prometheus worked, that attempt would be the beginning of the end for Imperial rule. In the High Council chamber, Chancellor Darvok had finally made his decision. The humans have shown themselves to be a threat to Imperial stability, he announced. Their questions undermine our authority. Their technology challenges our supremacy. Their very existence proves that resistance is possible. He stood slowly, his ancient frame still commanding respect and fear. Therefore I invoke Protocol 7. Complete sterilization of the human homeworld. Make it clear to every species in the galaxy what happens to those who refuse Imperial guidance. The council members nodded agreement. It was the same solution that had worked for 2 millennia. Demonstrate overwhelming power. Eliminate the troublemakers. Rule through fear. None of them realized that humanity had been preparing for exactly this moment. The trap was set. The Empire was about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The galaxy would never be the same. While the High Council prepared for war, humanity was already 3 steps ahead. The revelation that would change everything came from an unlikely source, a young communications specialist named So Young, working deep inside the Imperial archives on Vorth Prime. So Young had arrived 6 months after Taijin, using a different cover story. She claimed to be a graduate student researching galactic linguistics. The Imperial bureaucrats, impressed by her knowledge of ancient languages, had given her access to historical records. They thought they were helping an eager young scholar. They had no idea they were handing classified intelligence to Earth's finest codebreaker. For months, So Young had carefully worked her way through layers of Imperial history. She read everything: military reports, diplomatic correspondence, economic records, even personal diaries of Imperial officials. What she found painted a picture of an empire built on lies. The official version of Imperial expansion spoke of peaceful integration, willing cooperation, grateful species joining a beneficial union. The truth was very different. So Young discovered that every single species in the Empire had originally resisted Imperial rule. Everyone had asked to be treated as equals. Everyone had been told the same thing: submit or die. But it was her discovery about the Corvan Commonwealth that changed everything. Hidden in a file marked Historical Corrections, Classification Level Omega, So Young found the complete record of first contact with the Corvans. Video recordings, audio transmissions, tactical analyses, even personal letters from Imperial commanders. The Corvans had been peaceful explorers, much like humanity claimed to be. Their first message to the Empire had been almost identical to Captain Dongwu's transmission. "We know you're watching. We'd like to talk." The Imperial response had also been similar. They sent Envoy Prime Kalarth to establish formal relations. The negotiations had gone well. The Corvans offered technology, cultural exchange, mutual scientific research. They asked only to maintain their independence while contributing to galactic civilization. Emperor Vakthul, Darvok's predecessor, had seemed to agree. Treaties were signed. Trade agreements were established. For 5 years, the Corvan Commonwealth existed as an independent ally of the Valthek Empire. Then, something changed. So Young found the classified intelligence reports that explained why. Corvan technology had been advancing too quickly. Their questions about Imperial history had become too pointed. Worst of all, other species had begun asking why the Corvins were allowed to remain independent while everyone else had to submit to Imperial rule. The Emperor's response was swift and terrible. In a single coordinated attack, Imperial fleets struck all 12 Corvin worlds simultaneously. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Corvin Commonwealth no longer existed. But So Young found something else in those files. Something that made her hands shake as she read. The Corvins had not died quietly. In their final hours, as Imperial ships rained death from orbit, the Corvins had transmitted a message to every corner of the galaxy. It was a warning, broadcast, on frequencies that would reach every species with the technology to receive it. To all who listen, the final Corvin transmission had said, "Remember us. Remember that we asked for peace and received death. Remember that we offered friendship and received conquest. The Empire will come to you next. They will offer you the same choice they offered us. Kneel or die. But know this. There is another way. Unity. Resistance. Hope. We die today. But freedom lives forever." The message had been transmitted over and over until the last Corvin station fell silent. So Young realized that Earth had never been the first species to resist Imperial rule. They were just the first to do it successfully. She immediately transmitted her findings to Earth, using quantum burst technology that Imperial sensors couldn't detect. Her message reached Admiral Hyun Soo within minutes. Hyun Soo read the report, twice, then called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. "People," he said as the hologram flickered to life, showing council members from across the solar system, "we just learned something that changes our entire strategy." Dr. Ji-Wan leaned forward from her position on Mars Base Alpha. "What did So Young find?" "Proof that the Empire has been lying about their expansion for 2,000 years, Hyun-Soo replied. "Every species they claim joined willingly was actually conquered. Every peaceful integration was actually a massacre. And most importantly, they've done this before." He activated the holographic display, showing the final Corvin transmission. The council members watched in horrified silence as the story unfolded. "The question now," Hyun-Soo continued, "is whether we tell the galaxy what we've learned." Captain Dongwoo, now commanding humanity's most advanced warship, spoke from his bridge. "We don't have a choice. If we keep this secret, we become part of their lie. But if we reveal it, we start a galactic war," finished General Minho. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for caution, for trying to negotiate a peaceful solution. Others demanded immediate action. In the end, it was Dr. Ji-Wan who provided the deciding argument. "We're not starting a war," she said quietly. "The war started 2,000 years ago. We're just finally fighting back." The decision was unanimous. Within hours, humanity's most sophisticated communication array began broadcasting a signal across the galaxy. It was transmitted on every frequency, in every known language, using technology that made it impossible to block or jam. The message was simple, but devastating. "People of the galaxy," Captain Dongwoo's voice echoed across 1,000 star systems. "We are humanity, the species from the world called Earth. We have discovered something that the Valthek Empire does not want you to know. The story they tell about their expansion is a lie." The transmission continued for 12 hours, revealing everything So Young had found. The true fate of the Corvin Commonwealth. The massacres that followed every rejected offer of imperial protection. The systematic erasure of entire civilizations. But humanity didn't stop with revelation. They offered something more dangerous than truth. Hope. To every species listening to this message, Dongwoo continued, "Know that resistance is possible. Know that you are not alone. Know that somewhere in the galaxy there are others who refuse to kneel." The impact was immediate and catastrophic for the Empire. On Vethian Prime, the aquatic population that had willingly joined the Empire 2 centuries ago began asking questions about their own first contact. Why were there no records of the decision to join? Why had their previous government disappeared so completely? In the Thekmore crystal cities, the silicon-based life forms who prided themselves on logic and reason began analyzing imperial historical records with new skepticism. Mathematical analysis of population figures revealed massive gaps that could only be explained by systematic extermination. On worlds throughout the Empire, species that had lived under imperial rule for generations suddenly remembered stories their grandparents had whispered. Stories of resistance leaders who had vanished. Stories of entire cities that had been relocated. Stories that the Empire had tried to erase but had survived in song, in art, in the collective memory of the oppressed. But the most dangerous response came from the Corvan survivors. For 2,000 years, the Empire had believed they had eliminated every trace of the Corvan Commonwealth. They were wrong. A few thousand Corvans had survived on hidden colonies, scattered mining stations, deep space outposts. They had spent centuries believing they were the last of their kind. Now they knew they were not alone. The first Corvan transmission in 2 millennia was received by Earth Defense Command just days after humanity's galactic broadcast. Humanity, the message said, we are the children of those you honored with your truth. We remember. We have waited. We are ready to fight. More messages followed. Vethian resistance cells. Thekmore scientific enclaves. Species that Earth had never heard of, awakening from centuries of imposed sleep. On Vorth Prime, Chancellor Darvok received reports of uprising on 17 worlds. Imperial forces were stretched thin, trying to contain the spreading rebellion. How? He demanded of his intelligence chief. How did primitive humans coordinate resistance across the entire galaxy? The answer came from an unexpected source. Agent Taejin had been discovered and captured while trying to escape Vorth Prime. Under interrogation, he revealed something that shattered Imperial confidence. You think we're primitive? He said, blood running from his mouth where they had beaten him. You think we stumbled onto your secrets by accident? You're wrong. We've been preparing for this moment since we first detected your surveillance ships 3 centuries ago. The interrogator, a vicious Valthek named Cruel Dawn, leaned closer. Impossible. Your species has only had spaceflight for decades. Taejin smiled despite the pain. Our species has had imagination for millennia. We wrote stories about galactic empires before we could even leave our atmosphere. We studied the rise and fall of civilizations before we knew other civilizations existed. When we finally detected your presence, we already knew what you were. What are we? Kruldan demanded. A house of cards, Taejin replied. Built on fear, maintained by lies, held together by force, and now the wind is blowing. As if to prove his point, alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial capital. Another system had declared independence. Another Imperial fleet had been ambushed by rebels who somehow had access. Chancellor Darvok stood in the center of the High Council chamber, his ancient frame trembling with rage. Around him, holographic displays showed the spreading chaos across the Empire. 17 systems in open revolt, 43 more showing signs of unrest. Imperial fleets stretched thin, fighting battles on dozens of fronts. Enough! His voice boomed across the chamber. The humans have made their choice. They have chosen to be enemies of order, enemies of peace, enemies of civilization itself. Councillor Mechthol nodded eagerly. Chancellor, our forces are prepared. To move. 3 full battle fleets over 2,000 ships. We can reduce their homeworld to ash within hours. No, Darvok said coldly. Ash can be forgotten. We need something that will be remembered for 1,000 generations. We need terror so complete that no species will ever again dare to question Imperial authority. He activated the central display, showing the small blue world that had caused so much trouble. Earth hung in space, beautiful and defenseless, unaware of the doom approaching from across the galaxy. I want complete sterilization, Darvok continued. Not just their cities, not just their military. I want their oceans boiled away. I want their atmosphere burned off. I want every trace of human existence erased from the universe. The council members muttered their approval. It was the same solution they had used for 2 millennia. Demonstrate overwhelming power. Eliminate the troublemakers. Rule through fear. But this time, things would be different. Admiral Hyunsu stood in the command center of Seoul Station, watching the tactical displays with calm attention. For months, Earth's best strategists had been preparing for this moment. They knew the Empire's response would be massive, brutal, and predictable. Sir, reported Communications Officer Yu Jin, our deep space sensors are detecting massive fleet movements. 3 Imperial battle groups converging on Sol system. How long until they arrive? Hyunsu asked. 72 hours, sir. Around the command center, technicians worked quietly at their stations. There was no panic, no fear. Everyone knew their role in what was about to happen. Signal all defense stations, Hyunsu ordered. Begin Operation Prometheus. It's time to show the Empire what humans do when backed into a corner. Across the solar system, humanity's preparations became visible. Hidden weapon platforms powered up behind asteroid fields. Stealth ships decloaked near the gas giant moons. Massive railguns emerged from concealed positions on Mars and Luna. But the real surprise was on Earth itself. For the past year, engineer Yu Jin had been working on the most ambitious project in human history. Using technology reverse-engineered from Imperial ships and improved with human innovation, she had built something the galaxy had never seen before. A stellar engineering project. Deep beneath Earth's surface, fusion reactors the size of cities hummed with barely contained power. Magnetic field generators stretched in perfect formation around the planet's core. Quantum computers calculated trajectories with impossible precision. Yu Jin had turned Earth's sun into a weapon. The Imperial fleets arrived exactly as predicted. 3 massive battle groups dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sol system. Their ships arranged in the traditional Fist of Dominion formation that had terrified civilizations for 2,000 years. Admiral Krathvan, commanding the first battle group, opened communications as soon as his ships were in position. "Humans of Earth," his voice boomed across all frequencies. "By order of Chancellor Darvok and the High Council, you are hereby sentenced to extinction. Your resistance to Imperial authority has condemned your entire species. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." The response came not from Earth but from a single human ship that appeared near the largest Imperial dreadnought. Captain Dongwu's voice was calm, almost conversational. "Admiral Krathvan, this is Captain Dongwu of the Earth Defense Corps. Before you begin your attack, I want to make sure you understand something important." "What could primitives possibly tell the Empire?" Krathvan sneered. "We wanted to be your friends," Dongwu replied. "We offered you partnership, cooperation, shared knowledge. We asked only to be treated as equals. You chose war instead." "Empire does not negotiate with inferiors." "No," Dongwu agreed. "You don't. That's why you're about to lose." Krathvan laughed harshly. "Lose? Human, you have 12 ships. I have over 2,000. Your primitive weapons cannot even scratch our hulls." "You're right," Dongwu said. "Our ships can't defeat your fleet. Fortunately, we don't need to." That was when Krathvan noticed something odd. His sensors showed that Earth was empty. The planet was still there, still blue and beautiful, but there were no energy signatures, no cities, no population centers, no life signs at all. "Where are they?" he whispered. Dongwu heard the question. "Safe," he replied. "Far from here, building new homes among the stars. Earth is empty, Admiral, has been for months. We evacuated everyone." "Impossible. Our intelligence shows billions of humans on that world." "Your intelligence shows what we wanted you to see. Holographic projections, automated systems, computer programs designed to fool your sensors. We've been preparing for this attack since the day we first made contact." Krathvan felt cold fear creeping through his body. "Then what is the point? If your people are gone, destroying your world means nothing." "Oh, we're not going to let you destroy Earth," Dongwu said pleasantly. "We're going to do it ourselves." Before Krathvan could respond, Yu Jin's stellar engineering project activated. The changes to Sol were subtle at first. A slight increase in solar output, a small shift in the star's magnetic field. But within minutes, the effects became impossible to ignore. Sol began to expand. "What are you doing?" Krathvan screamed into his communicator. "We're turning our sun into a weapon." Yu Jin's voice came from Earth's surface. "It's temporary, don't worry. The expansion will last just long enough to sterilize everything within 10 astronomical units. Your fleets included." The Imperial ships tried to run, but it was too late. Sol's radiation pulse moved at the speed of light, faster than any ship could travel. One by one, the Imperial vessels were caught in the expanding wave of lethal energy. Over 2,000 ships, the pride of the Imperial fleet. Gone in minutes, but Captain Dongwu wasn't finished. As the last Imperial ship died in the stellar fire, human vessels appeared throughout Imperial space. Not the small ships the Empire remembered, but massive battleships built with combined human Imperial technology and powered by human determination. Dongwu's voice echoed across 17-star systems simultaneously. "People of the galaxy," he began. "The Valtech Empire has chosen war over peace, domination over cooperation, fear over hope. They have spent 2,000 years telling you that resistance is impossible. They lied. Images filled screens across hundreds of worlds. The destruction of the Imperial fleets, the empty cities of Earth, the truth about Imperial expansion. This is humanity's answer to tyranny," Dongwu continued. We will not conquer your worlds. We will not rule your people. We will not become the new empire. Instead, we offer you something the galaxy has not seen in 2 millennia. Freedom. On Vorth Prime, Chancellor Darvok watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from across Imperial space. Entire systems declaring independence. Imperial governors fleeing their posts. Military units refusing orders to fire on civilian populations. How? He whispered. How did they coordinate all this? The answer came from his own intelligence chief, who had just finished analyzing the human communications network. Chancellor, the officer reported, his voice shaking. They didn't just prepare for war. They prepared for after the war. Every ship, every weapon, every strategic position has been placed not to defend Earth, but to support galactic liberation. Darvok sank into his throne. They planned this, all of it, from the very beginning. Yes, sir. They knew we would respond with overwhelming force. They knew we would try to destroy their homeworld. They used our own predictability against us. As, if summoned by their conversation, a new transmission reached Vorth Prime. Captain Dongwu appeared on the main screen, no longer the polite diplomat who had first entered Imperial space. Chancellor Darvok, he said, your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed, your subjects are free, but you still have a choice. The ancient Valthek leader glared at the human. I will never surrender to primitives. I'm not asking you to surrender, Dongwu replied. I'm asking you to evolve. The galaxy is changing, Chancellor. You can change with it or you can be left behind. The transmission ended, leaving Darvok alone with the ruins of his empire. Outside his palace windows, the city of Vorth Prime burned, as freed species settled old scores with their former masters. The Empire's 2,000-year reign was ending, and in its place, something new was being born. Something the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization built on freedom, cooperation, and hope. Humanity had kept its promise. They had given the galaxy a choice, and the galaxy had chosen freedom. 6 months after the fall of the Imperial fleets, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Dr. Jiwan stood on the observation deck of New Corvin Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the massive space facility. Vathian bioships shaped like living creatures moved alongside crystalline Thekmor vessels. Human cargo haulers shared docking space with liberated Imperial craft, now flying under the flags of their homeworlds. It's remarkable, said Elder Velkara, the senior Corvin survivor who had helped design the station. 2,000 years of Imperial rule ended in less than 6 months. Jiwan nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. The Empire didn't fall because we destroyed their ships. It fell because we gave people something to believe in again. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see work crews from multiple species installing quantum communicators. The new galactic communication network would allow instant contact between all member worlds of what they were calling the Free Systems Alliance. But the real work was happening in conference rooms and meeting halls across the galaxy, where representatives from liberated worlds struggled to create something that had never existed before, a truly democratic galactic government. The process was messy, complicated, and often frustrating. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to work together. Different biologies meant different needs. Different cultures led to different perspectives on law, justice, and governance. Yet somehow, it was working. Dr. Jiwan called. Communications Officer Park So-young from across the station's command center. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Hyun-soo wants to speak with you. Jiwan made her way to the secure communication booth, wondering what crisis required her attention now. Running a galactic revolution was exhausting work. Admiral Hyun-soo's face appeared on the screen, but instead of his usual serious expression, he was smiling. Jiwan, he said, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Give me the bad news. I'm used to it by now. We've located the last major Imperial holdout. Chancellor Darvok has fortified himself in the Nexus system with about 50 ships and the remains of the Imperial Guard. Jiwan sighed. How many civilians? About 2 million Valthek, plus support staff from other species. They're trapped on the system's main world. This was the problem they had faced repeatedly since the Empire's fall. Not all Imperial citizens were evil oppressors. Many were ordinary people who had lived their entire lives under Imperial rule and didn't know any other way to exist. What's the good news? Jiwan asked. Hyun-soo's smile widened. We've figured out how to end this without firing a shot. 3 days later, a small diplomatic ship approached the Nexus system. It carried no weapons, no troops, no threats of violence. Instead, it carried something far more dangerous to the Imperial remnant. The truth. Captain Dongwu, now serving as humanity's chief diplomat, requested permission to speak directly with Chancellor Darvok. The old Valthek leader, desperate and alone, agreed to the meeting. They met in the ruins of the Imperial Palace with only their translators present. Darvok looked ancient beyond his years, his scales dulled by stress and defeat. So, he said bitterly, the primitive humans come to gloat over their victory. Actually, Dongwu replied, I came to offer you a job. Darvok blinked his 4 eyes in surprise. A job? The Free Systems Alliance needs someone who understands Imperial administration. 2,000 years of bureaucracy doesn't disappear overnight. We need help transitioning the former Imperial worlds to self-governance. You want me to help destroy everything I built? Dongwu leaned forward. I want you to help build something better. He activated a portable hologram projector, showing scenes from across the former empire. Vethian artists creating sculptures that combined their aquatic heritage with influences from dozens of other cultures. Thekmor scientists sharing their crystal-growing technology with anyone who asked. Corvin engineers working alongside humans to build faster, safer spaceships. This is what your empire could have been, Dongwu said. Not conquered subjects, but willing partners. Not fearful compliance, but enthusiastic cooperation. Darvok watched the images in silence. And if I refuse, then you stay here, guarding the ruins of a dead empire until your people decide they'd rather join the galaxy than hide from it. The conversation continued for hours. Dongwu didn't argue or threaten. He simply presented the facts. The empire was gone. The galaxy had moved on. Darvok could be part of building something new, or he could be irrelevant. In the end, the decision came down to a simple choice: evolution or extinction. 2 weeks later, the last Imperial fleet surrendered, without firing a shot. But the real victory came in Chancellor Darvok's final transmission to any remaining Imperial loyalists scattered across the galaxy. His words would become known throughout galactic history as the darkest warning, a message that spread from system to system, carried by refugees, traitors, and survivors of the fallen empire. Standing before the cameras in his former throne room, now converted to a civilian administration center, Darvok spoke with the weight of 2,000 years of history in his voice. To all who serve the empire, he began. To all who believed in our cause, to all who thought our reign would last forever, hear these words and remember them well. He paused, his ancient eyes reflecting the pain of absolute defeat and the beginning of understanding. We were wrong. About everything. We told ourselves we brought order to chaos, peace to war, civilization to primitives. We believed our own lies so completely that we forgot they were lies. The humans showed us the truth. They are not like us. They do not conquer. They liberate. They do not rule. They inspire. They do not destroy. They transform. Darvok's voice grew stronger as he continued. We believed ourselves apex predators in a galaxy of prey. We measured our worth by the fear we inspired, the submission we commanded, the worlds we controlled. We thought strength meant the ability to make others kneel. The humans taught us a different definition of strength. True strength is lifting others up, not pushing them down. True power is inspiring cooperation, not enforcing obedience. True victory is when your enemies choose to become your friends. He gestured toward the window, where ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through space. Look at what they have built in just 6 months. A galactic civilization based on cooperation, not conquest. A community of equals working toward common goals. Species that were our enemies for centuries now work side by side, sharing knowledge, resources, and dreams. We spent 2 millennia trying to create unity through force. They achieved it in months through hope. Darvok's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than any shout. This is our darkest warning, the truth that cost us everything. Fear the humans not for their weapons or their ships, but for their dreams. They dream of a galaxy where no species kneels to another, where strength serves justice rather than ambition, where the stars themselves echo with the sound of freedom. We tried to kill that dream. Instead, they made it reality. In their mercy, they proved more dangerous to our empire than we ever were to their species. They gave the galaxy something we spent 2 millennia trying to destroy: hope. And hope, once awakened, can never be put back to sleep. The transmission ended, but Darvok's words spread across the galaxy faster than any Imperial fleet had ever moved. Former Imperial citizens shared the message with their children. Refugees carried it to distant worlds. Traders transmitted it along shipping routes. The warning became a teaching. The teaching became a legend. The legend became the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Years later, when historians studied the fall of the Valthek Empire, they would mark this transmission as the true end of the Imperial Age. Not because it announced surrender, but because it acknowledged transformation. The Empire had fallen, but something greater had risen in its place. In the former Imperial Palace on Vorth Prime, now serving as the headquarters of the Galactic Rehabilitation, Commissioned Dr. Ji-Wan worked late into the night. Her current project was establishing educational programs for former Imperial worlds, teaching democratic principles to populations who had never experienced freedom. A soft chime announced an incoming message. The hologram showed Captain Dong Wu, now approaching his 60th birthday but still humanity's voice among the stars. "Ji-Wan," he said, "we just received confirmation. The last Imperial holdout world has voted to join the Alliance. It's over. The Empire is officially extinct." Ji-Wan leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of history. "What's next?" Dong Wu smiled. "Now we do the hard part. We prove that what we built can last." Through her office window, Ji-Wan could see the lights of New Vorth, the city that had grown around the former Imperial capital. Humans, Vethians, Corvins, Thekmor, and dozens of other species lived and worked together, creating art, raising families, and building dreams that their grandparents could never have imagined. The Empire had promised order through fear. Humanity had delivered peace through hope. The galaxy had made its choice. And in choosing freedom, it had chosen to become something new. Something that would echo through the stars for generations to come. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun.